To understand the exploitative economic strategy that finances the American empire, we need to start at the very beginning, with what world debt and the economic order looked like before World War I. Prior to World War I, claims on foreign assets were primarily held by private investors. What this basically meant was that private investors from country A would buy equity interests, or stakes, in companies based in country B. They would also put their money in mortgage bonds backed by income-producing assets in railroads, mining companies, banks, and other foreign-based corporations. What would happen was that as the wealth of country B increased, so would the wealth of the investors, as they were repaid out of the profits of the mines, factories, or other enterprises they'd bought into. But private investors didn't limit themselves to just putting their money in companies. They would also lend to governments, in which case their repayment came from growth in the national tax base. Here's how it worked. Before World War I, governments would typically borrow money from private hands. They would then use the borrowed funds to finance projects aimed at increasing their national income and thus their tax revenue. The idea here was that the project would create something productive that would generate money. The governments would then tax this new income and use part of it to pay back what it owed its lenders. This was the status quo pre-World War I. While it was still common for governments to have large debts, they owed most of that money to private investors, not to other governments. But World War I turned everything on its head. Suddenly, governments owed massive amounts of money to other governments. In what felt like basically overnight, the value of the debt owed by one government to another became higher than that of international private investments. And this intergovernmental debt played a different game. All these indebted governments owed money to one government in particular. That government was the government of the United States. By the way, if you want to understand the economic inner workings of American empire, I highly recommend checking out this really cool book, Imperialism by economist and Professor Michael Hudson. It's my source for this series, and in each episode, I'll be breaking down a different part of the book. And to find out how European governments ran up all that debt and how it helped fuel the American empire's rise to power, stay tuned for part 2.